State Representative Rafael Anchia from Dallas, thank you so much for joining us. You sat on the Energy Committee and you attended the hearings for both days, a lot of testimony. But first, some breaking news before I ask you about those hearings, and that is your thought about the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, now calling for the resignation of the Public Utility Commission Chair and ERCOT's CEO.
Yeah, I think the Lieutenant Governor's spot on there in listening to about 30 hours of testimony. It became clear to me that there was not only a failure of the grid, and a lot of statewide politicians have been talking about that, but there was also a failure by the Public Utility Commission to engage in oversight over ERCOT. I mean, the reality is the Public Utility Commission is the handpicked team of the governor with 3 members that are appointed by Greg Abbott, and they were asleep at the wheel. I mean, the chair got to serve on the ERCOT board, never raised a flag, never said there was a problem, never reported to the legislature that we had a weatherization issue, even despite the fact that she knew about the 2011 report. We told her to fix that problem, and they just never did it. So I think Lieutenant Governor Patrick is right on in calling for the chair to resign, and I hope the governor acts quickly on that.
I was going to say, I've requested a statement from the governor and haven't heard from the office just yet. What's your thought about the fact that he hasn't called for the chair's resignation just yet?
Well, the fact that he didn't even mention the Public Utility Commission in most of his initial comments, I think, was disingenuous at best. I mean, they have the authority to decertify ERCOT, literally the heaviest of all hammers. They approve their budget. They approve who the CEO and the vice chair is, or the chair and the vice chair of the board. They installed and approved all of those out-of-state directors on the board. The PUC approves all that. So the fact that they weren't even mentioned at the outset, and the fact that you've asked for comment now and the lieutenant governor is sort of upping the pressure on resignation, means, I guess, that the governor thinks that's okay. The only way for him to distance himself from the scandal that is the PUC and ERCOT is to have that chair resign.
And do you think that ERCOT's CEO should also resign?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, there was a massive failure at ERCOT, and I think that's been well discussed publicly. So that one goes without saying. The PUC chair needs to go as well.
Let me ask you about another headline today, and that is that the Brasos Electric Power Co-op, the largest in the state, has gone belly up. They're basically asking for bankruptcy protection. What is your reaction to that? Do you think we're going to see more of that? And what happens? Is the state going to have to bail these co-ops out?
Yeah, I'm against bailouts. Look, we've deregulated this market and privatized large parts of it. So if, hey, you guys wanted a private market, then there's private risk associated with that, and you need to eat those charges. You're not going to pass those along to consumers. That is incredibly unfair, especially after consumers are receiving astronomical bills. I was really happy that Vistra up here in North Texas said they would not be passing those costs on to consumers. Their CEO came before our committee and said, no, we're going to eat that, and that's about $1 billion worth. We also need to find out, somebody walked away with a bag of money here at the end. I don't know if it was the gas guys who were able to charge exorbitant prices after the PUC lifted the price cap, or who, but it wasn't the power generating companies. Obviously, with the bankruptcy of this Brasos Power Cooperative, it wasn't them, and it wasn't consumers. So I want to engage in additional investigation to make sure that there wasn't price gouging here, and that people weren't taking advantage of scarcity in the gas market to make a ton of money at the expense of people without power.
I mean, do you think? I mean, we heard a little bit last week about the people on variable rates. My understanding is not a lot of people took those options. Most people are on a fixed rate. And so I'm wondering, how widespread do you think that these, people who are on a fixed rate, how big of a problem is it going to be where they're going to get astronomical rate increases, or their bills are going to go way up because of through no fault of their own.
Yeah, we should not allow consumers to buy into these variable plans. We should outlaw them in this state, and that's one of the things we're going to do this session. The fact that the Public Utility Commission allowed these rates that should be only for commercial buyers and not residential buyers is beyond the pale. I mean, it's one thing if you've got an entire trading desk of analysts and power traders. Okay, fine, you can be on a wholesale power or variable power rate because you might have a meteorologist. You may be able to take a look at the market risk and time your purchases of power. Residents don't have that. They barely understand how the market works as well, including me, by the way, and I'm a legislator, right? Yet we need to put people into safe, reliable plans that does not cause them to have a $13,000, $15,000 bill when there's an extreme weather event like this. It's really beyond the pale. The fact that the PUC allowed this stuff to happen, shame on them. And if we don't fix it this session, shame on the legislature.
But back to, my question about just everyday residents who were on the fixed plans. What happens to them if they get all of a sudden these, astronomical bills through no fault of their own?
Yeah, the legislature can't allow price gouging. I know that Gritty, which is one of the variable rate providers, they've already been outlawed in the state. I think that's just the beginning. People should not have to pay a 1 month power bill that is the equivalent of the purchase of a used car or even a new car in some cases in the state. So that's just wrong. It's unfair. The state shouldn't allow it, and we need to cancel those bills for those consumers that are being gouged.
Does that require legislation in your mind?
It does.
Let me ask you about, these hearings are done. I understand your committee has another hearing on Wednesday of this week. And I'm wondering, the governor has said he doesn't want the legislature to be able to leave before this is fixed. And obviously, lawmaking can be messy. You've got the House, then the Senate, and if one passes it, then the other chamber's got to look and see if they agree with it, how they would change it. I'm wondering, do you think in this case, because it is such an important issue and you only have in the regular session until the end of May, should there not be a working group of both the House and the Senate, maybe everybody who was on these committees, State Affairs, Business and Commerce in the Senate, and Energy in House, should there not be a working group between Republicans, Democrats, House, and Senate to try to come up with something that both houses could agree to so that there isn't this back and forth at the last minute?
Yeah, that's already happening. Thankfully, the chairs of both State Affairs and House Energy and the vice chairs are already meeting with their Senate counterparts. And what I want to emphasize to your viewers is now is not a time for half measures. It's a time to be bold. It's entirely possible that we collapse ERCOT and the PUC and put it under one person so that there's not a bunch of finger pointing and saying, well, no, it's ERCOT's fault or it's the PUC's fault or we didn't have enough power. No, the buck has to stop with somebody. It either stops with the regulatory agency or it stops with the governor, right? But it has to stop somewhere. And so I think you're going to see some bold action. We're going to change the entire regulatory structure here. We're going to relook at the market architecture because it doesn't make sense the way it's set up now, where people can be gouged during a terrible storm where they lose power. That's a perverse outcome that can't continue. And so House and Senate members are looking at this on a bipartisan basis. Look, the calls from for the resignation of the PUC chair and the ERCOT chair are coming from both chambers, and they're coming from Republicans and Democrats. You know why? Because everybody suffered. When you have 4.5 million Texans without power and 14 million Texans without water, everybody suffered, and everybody's demanding accountability. You're going to get that by both chambers by working together this session.
And let me ask you one other question, Representative, and that is, Kurt Morgan from Vistra was among those who said during the hearings that there really needs to be a seamless and integrated, gas and electric grids, which we do not have now, and there is no single regulator. So I'm wondering, you've, I think, mentioned before about the Railroad Commission needs to be renamed, but I'm wondering, do you think that it's time for electric and gas to be under one commission? So in other words, I think you may have suggested it as well, Texas Energy Resources, where this is under one regulator, accountable to the public through elections. What's your thought on that?
Look, I've been very critical of the Railroad Commission in the past. I wanted to rename that commission and sort of reconstitute its sort of functions. I think now is the right time to do that. I think a single regulator makes a lot of sense. I think that person should be publicly accountable, not a government appointee. I think it's really important that they be elected by the people of Texas, because it's that kind of pressure that is going to keep rates down. It's that kind of pressure that's going to make sure we don't have blackouts again. Because right now, and Kurt Morgan at Vistra was one of the real straight talkers during our hearings, but you had a lot of people pointing in different directions. It was the oil patch. It was the Railroad Commission. It was the PUC. It was ERCOT. And we can't have that anymore. In fact, what I've asked our chairman to do on the Energy Committee is invite independent experts for our next hearing, so we can hear from people who don't have that direct conflict of interest and who can look at things objectively. Because I think there's going to be there needs to be an entire restructure of the regulators, and I am completely in favor of putting things under a energy resources commissioner. I think that makes a lot of sense. I want them to be publicly accountable to the people of Texas.
And that would, just so that I understand, that would be energy as far as electric and gas grids together.
That's right.
Okay. All right. State Representative Rafael Anchia, thank you so much for your insight and appreciate your time today.
Appreciate you, Jack. Thanks for covering this.